Any Saved by the Bell fans out there? Well, if you're looking for your next show to binge watch, any binge watchers out there of shows, I just finished the 9th season of The Office, and going through it for the first time, I shed tears when it ended, and I think I'm gonna take a page out of my homie Sarah Belgum's book, and she's like a massive Parks and Recs fan, so much so that there are 8 seasons, 7 seasons. See, it shows how much a fan I am. And when Sarah finishes the 7th season of Parks and Rec, guess what she does? In the same setting, this is like she's religious about this. In the same setting that she finishes the last episode, she will start the first episode. And so that she is constantly on this loop of Parks and Rec, she's going to start a board game, a whole lifestyle around the show Parks and Rec. So if you have any Parks and Rec questions, trivia, ask Sarah. But stoked to be teaching with Sarah today. We're tackling this topic. If I could go back, how would I do school differently? And there are there are exactly 168 hours in a week, so 24 times 7, 168. And if you do the math in your head of, on average, most of you probably get about, on a good week, 40 to 50 hours-ish of sleep a week, right? Hopefully. Unless you're out there and you're like, I average 3 hours a night of sleep, I'm a machine, right? I'm a video game machine, I'm an Instagram machine, whatever it is that you're constantly on your phone for, and you're caffeinated up to here and you're about to explode, and we want to stay far away from you. About 40 to 50 hours a week we spend sleeping. About 40 to 50 hours a week we also probably spend at school. Unless you're the type of person that like screeches into the parking lot on 2 wheels and you show up right as the bell rings and then you leave like the second that bell rings at the end of school, you're like, peace, I'm out. And you like run and jump into your screeching car as your mom or your dad picks you up. Or how many of you have your license now? Yeah, 2 of you, 3 of you. Sean Breezy has his license, y'all. So it's like the weirdest thing for me now to watch a couple of you pull up in your own cars, right? Like Manny got out of his little Toyota Tacoma this morning. And I'm like, wait, you drove yourself? Like that's allowed? Like who let this happen, right? 911. Hello, sir. There's somebody driving that shouldn't be. And so about half of your time then, right? 40 to 50 hours sleeping, 40 to 50 hours at school. About half of your time is spent either at school or sleeping. And now, as much as I would love to stand up here and give a whole message on sleeping and say like, hey, for the next 40 minutes, ready? Everybody find your spot in the room, right? Like get your yoga mat, lean over, let's nap. I hated that class when I was in like pre-K and kindergarten, right? They were like nap time and I was like, no. Now, I would literally kill for somebody to tell me to take a nap. Like if somebody walked up to me and was like, Austin, it's nap time, I'd be like, thank you. You have no idea what that means to me. And as much as I'd like to talk about the theology of sleeping, we're not going to do that today, but we're going to talk about school, right? And this whole series has been broken down with this understanding of if we as a Fuel 910 staff, if we could go back, put our backpacks on, throw the Algebra 2 book in our backpack and go back to school with you on Monday or Tuesday, depending on what school you go to, what would we do differently? How would we approach our friendships differently? How would we approach dating differently? Our resources, our families, what would we change? And this is a big one for me. If I could go back to high school, how would I do high school itself differently? And as we start up life groups this next week on Wednesday, I would challenge you, really encourage you to pick up conversation on some of these things. Right? Some of you sat through that dating talk and for the first time heard a biblical framework of what does dating actually look like? What does this look like done well? Some of you need to have that conversation in your life group. Some of you need to have a conversation about your families, about how we deal with money, about how we deal with the resources that we've been given. Encourage you to pick that conversation up in your life groups on Wednesdays. If you missed one of these messages, this is probably one of the most practical, like life advice, biblical framework, your best yes that we've given from this stage in Fuel 910. If you've missed one of these messages, encourage you, go back, fuel910.com. There's only like 4 tabs on that entire website. One of them's teaching. Click on that tab, watch one of these messages, have a conversation about this. It's the most tangible, us as a staff going, man, here's what we would do differently if we could go back and be in your shoes right now. When it comes to school, there's a handful of things that I would do differently. And as Sarah and I prepped for this, as we talked about it as a staff, I think both of us, with this understanding of in high school, for some reason, as high schoolers, we kind of operate with this like, I can't wait to be done with high school. I can't wait to graduate because then real life starts. Or then like missional opportunities will come up. Or then I can kind of take my relationship with Jesus seriously. Or then I can go to college and I can kind of reinvent myself and I can start being fill in the blank person. Very rarely have I had a conversation with somebody who looks back on high school and they're like, oh my gosh, I loved high school. It was the best. Right? Some people, for sure. And some of you in this room are like, I love high school. I love being a sophomore. I love being a freshman. Nah, no one's ever said that before, right? No, I'm just kidding. So like, for some of you, that exists. But for some of you, you're like, I can't wait to get out. I can't wait to graduate. And so today, we want to tackle this conversation, this understanding of, man, if we could go back, how would we do it differently? How would we take the right here, right now, and say, God, what do you have to teach me here? What do you have to teach me now? I remember for me specifically a conversation that happened for me in college where I absolutely couldn't wait to be done with college. And I had just come back from Africa, and I was sitting in an air-conditioned room with a bunch of other Christians at a Christian university, and I had just walked off the mission field in Africa going, God, why am I in school? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing homework. I don't want to be studying for tests. I don't want to be doing this right now. I don't want to be in school. And I remember almost this like 2x4 across the head moment that God just challenged me with of, and what are you doing with what I've given you right here, right now? Not a future opportunity, not like hoping for the someday, but how are you being faithful right here, right now with what I've been giving you, with what I've given you? So today, really, I want to challenge you as a freshman in high school, as a sophomore in high school, what does it look like to respond to this season that you find yourself in right here, right now? What does it look like to respond to that well?
Hey guys. Okay, Austin was not joking about my love of Parks and Rec. Let me just be clear on that. I really do start it over or else I get really sad that it has ended. And I've watched it at least 10 times all the way through. And there's like certain episodes, I know exactly what's going to happen and I still cry every time. I'm like, oh my gosh, Leslie won. Like city council, it's so exciting. But yeah, I love it. It's the best. You should all watch it. But not talking about Parks and Rec, sadly. But talking about high school, which is equally great, maybe. So it's been funny looking back on my time in high school because I was one of those people that Austin was talking about. They were like, I loved high school. Like, I was like, this is awesome. I love it. It's so much fun. And now looking back on it, I'm like, oh gosh, I feel like I've kind of had like a little bit of a crisis of maybe I didn't do high school as well as, well, I definitely didn't do it as well as I could have or should have. And yeah, looking back on it has been like, okay, I kind of wish that I did things differently. But in the moment, I loved it and thought it was like the best and so fun. But yeah, I think because I had one of those big moments of like, I think I was always waiting for real life to start after high school. I was a very involved high schooler, which is part of why I loved it. But yeah, I was on ASB leadership. I was on student council. Maybe that's why I love Parks and Rec and Leslie. I was a cheerleader, and I was on the dive team, and I played soccer. And I was really involved in my church, which was like right next door to my high school. It was a very small town, and they were literally like a stone's throw away from each other. But like all the trips, camps, anything, like I was all about it, and I loved it. And that was like my main concern. That's all I cared about was like, I want to hang out with my friends. I want to do these things because they're fun. And like all other things can wait till after high school. And even though I was involved in church, I think I felt that way about my relationship with God. Like, yeah, I go to church and I'm involved, but like I'll really get serious about it after I graduate. Like I'll actually read my Bible or like pray or like tithe. Like I'm in high school. Are you kidding? I'm not going to do that. But after high school, I totally will. And something else that I really thought could wait till after high school was missions. Kind of like Austin was saying, I was a sophomore in high school, and I went to a camp called Hume Lake. And I remember hearing the missionary speaker, and he was, I don't remember exactly where from, but somewhere in Africa, I think Kenya, maybe Uganda, I don't know. And I just remember him talking about like his ministry and what he was doing, and I was like, yes, that is like the best. That is so cool. I'm going to do that. Like, once I graduate high school, then I'm going to, like, go out. I'm going to, like, tell the people the good news about Jesus, and it's going to be great. But I can't do it right now because I'm, like, bound to these walls of high school. But again, looking back on it, it's like, dang, what an opportunity I had in high school to be missional while I was there. I did have the opportunity after high school to do some missions, which were awesome. I did a program called YWAM, and I went to Australia for like 4.5 months and really studied scripture. And then we went to Mozambique, which is a country in Africa, and we like lived in mud huts and had no running water or electricity. And you went to the bathroom in a hole in the ground, and it was such like a unique and awesome experience. And then I also went to South Africa about a year after that. And again, like an incredible experience. And in no way am I saying like those things are bad and it's bad to go and do missions, because it's definitely not. But that is like what I thought missions meant. It was like, to do missions, I have to go. Like I have to go somewhere else before I can talk about who Jesus is or like really show my faith to people. Yeah, and now realizing, like, you guys, high school is, like, such a crazy, unique place, and you probably are like, no, it's not, it's so boring. But being on the outside of it, like, it really is so unique. And when you go and do missions, so much of it is about relationships and building relationships with people. So, like, in Mozambique, we played soccer. That's how we, like, bridged that gap and built relationships. In South Africa, we surfed and, like, taught them how to surf, built relationships that way. In high school, you guys have these like crazy built-in relationships of the people that you're in class with, your teachers, the people who you're on sports teams with. Like, you're constantly surrounded by people who are sharing similar experiences with you, and that is like such a way to build relationships and to connect with people. And again, I just so wish that I had like realized what was happening right in front of me and showing Jesus to people then, and how I behave and how I respect my teachers and how I do my homework and all of these different things, than thinking, oh, I have to graduate before I can do those things. If you guys want to turn to Matthew, if you have your Bibles, first book in the New Testament, and it's also my brother's name, fun fact. So Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to verse 13. We're going to do 13 through 16. It's all about salt and light. If you guys were on leadership team in junior high, I think it's like salt, right? Light? I don't remember. It's something like that. So relatable. Okay, so verse 13, it starts out, says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." So this section is talking, right? It says you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the earth. So light, it illuminates things, right? It makes it so that things can be seen. So we as Christians are to illuminate Christ and make him seen. And salt preserves things, right? So like specifically meats, it like keeps it from rotting or decaying or things. And so we are the salt of the earth and trying to preserve like the world. It sounds dramatic, but essentially trying to preserve the world from also rotting and decaying. And I love that it says you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the earth. It's not like you will one day become these things. Like once you graduate, that is when you get this like stamp of approval and you are the salt and light of the earth. It's like, no, you currently are those things. And it doesn't happen later. You are those things right now, and you're either fulfilling that or you're failing at that. Like you're either taking advantage of the fact that you're the salt and light or you're not. So we're going to talk a little bit more about different ways that you can do that and be that salt and light, but just as a reminder and an encouragement, like you guys are that right now. It doesn't happen later.
Yeah, I love that challenge, and I remember crystal clear thinking that of missions looks like two things. One, it's a future thing, and two, it's a foreign thing. right? It's going to happen someday. I'm going to go to 11-12, and I'm potentially going to go to Ecuador or Belize, or like I'm going to go somewhere. I remember thinking missions was like an Africa thing, right? I love that Sarah said it last night. Like if you go to Africa, it's extra holy. Why? It's like, who knows? But that's like this fulfillment, this thing that we think of. I remember getting back from Ecuador one summer. I grew up down in South America, and people asked me like, oh my gosh, you're from Ecuador, how's Africa? I was like, no idea. I'm sure it's great, but you suck at geography. And I remember thinking that missions was what my parents did. Missions was a future thing, like a someday when I'm grown up. And I love that challenge that Sarah gives us of, man, so much of missions is relational. It's so true. When you go on a mission trip, so much of what you do is just building relationships. And at North Coast, we kind of have this mantra of relationships are the bridge truth travels over. Think about your high school. How many relationships do you currently have that you have the opportunity to be that salt, to be that light, to talk about Jesus in a way that you wouldn't get to have in a foreign country even, or you wouldn't get to have with people that you don't know? Relationships are so key when it comes to living missionally. A couple phrases here, and you definitely don't have to raise your hand because I think this would be like self-condemning, but I'm curious how many of these kind of align with the way that you think about high school, okay? How about this? I hate high school. I hate homework. I hate studying. No, I said you don't have to raise your hand, okay? These are going to be condemning here in just a second, okay? I actually hate homework so much that I end up copying people's homework pretty consistently because I don't want to do the homework myself. So I just copy it. I've cheated on an assignment. I've cheated on a test. I was too lazy to study. I didn't want to study, so I cheated on the test. I'm doing the minimum required. I just do whatever it takes to get that B or to get that C because, hey, at the end of the day, C's to get degrees, okay? How about this one? This is probably the most condemning one for me personally. I am a procrastinator, okay? Again, don't raise your hands. Probably one of my favorite like art pieces of all time was this door. It was just a picture of a door with a glass thing on it. It said Procrastinators Anonymous, like a place where procrastinators could come together and meet and talk about their procrastination problem. And over that sign, it said meeting postponed. Right? It's like, of course, a Procrastinators Anonymous meeting would be like, we'll get to it later. And this was absolutely me through high school, through college, something I probably still struggle with, of putting it off and going, I'll get to it. And then if I'll get to it, sometimes that looks like I just need to get it done. I just need to do the minimum amount. And what I want to push back on a little bit and challenge is what Scripture says about these things. Okay, a couple people, if you can open up to these verses for me. If you're taking notes today, write these references down. Colossians 3:23. Can someone read that for me? Colossians 3:23. Thanks, Luke Choi. Colossians 3:23. How about 1 Corinthians 10:31? Thank you very much. And lastly, India, do you want to get Ephesians chapter 6, verse 7? You got it? Okay, sorry. She's got it. You got me last night. So Ephesians chapter 6, verse 7. And as we read these verses, I want you to pick up on thematically what is Scripture saying about how we should approach work ethic. What is Scripture saying about how we should approach homework, about how should approach studying, schoolwork, whatever it may be. And for a lot of us, this is going to be a kind of a slap in the face of what does it look like to approach work differently. See, in Greek culture, and when a lot of Scripture was written, the like kind of epitome, the epic part of culture, like what you were trying to get to, the goal of your life was to get to the point where you didn't have to work. Like physical, manual labor, hard work, that was seen as something for peasants, for like the lowlifes. And if you worked hard, it meant you were poor. And so the peak of society was to get to the point where you could kick your boots up and go, no more work. And for a lot of us, I think that's kind of what we think of. Man, I just need to make it to the weekend. I just got to get it to spring break. I just got to get to summer break. Why? Because then I can finally kick my boots up. The only problem with that is Scripture. Okay, you got that first verse from me, Luke? Read it nice and loud. Colossians 3:23. What does it say? One more verse. Sorry. Give me 24 too. What? Go ahead. Go ahead. Keep going. It's the Lord you're serving, not men. Whatever you do, do it with all your heart, as if the Lord was your master, as if God was watching. Whatever you do it with all of your heart. You know what I think that includes? I think that includes homework. I think it includes studying for tests. I think it includes doing things with all of our heart, not just doing the minimum amount required. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. Nice and loud. Whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. What would it look like if we approached school this way? If we approached homework this way? If we approached the classroom this way? See, here's a convicting question. Here's a challenge for me personally. If I look back, and one of the biggest things I think I would like to change is this. If I walked into your classrooms tomorrow, and I walked up to your teachers and I said, hey, did you know that fill in the blank name? Did you know that they're a Christian? Did you know that they like come to church, they're involved in a life group? Would that shock your teacher? Or would they go, yeah, no, I believe that. I believe that about them, based on their work ethic, based on how they treat others, based on how they respect me? I don't know the answer to this question, but I think some of my teachers would have been shocked in high school. What, Austin? Austin goes to church? He's in a life group? Wait, you're talking about the same Austin that I kicked out of class last week for talking back to me 5 times. You're talking about the same Austin that I caught copying homework. You're talking about the same Austin that, whatever it may be. Would that shock our fellow classmates? Would that shock our teachers that we are Christ followers? If in everything that you do it all for the glory of God. See, the purpose of our lives as Christians should not be to see how much we can get away with and still call ourselves Christians. See, the first time you ever cheated on something, the first time you copied homework, the first time you kind of did the minimum amount required, you maybe felt a little bad about it. And you turned in that copied homework, or you cheated on that test, or whatever it may be, and you kind of felt that tinge of guilt inside of like, oof, I should not have done that. And yet, I didn't have time, or it's just easier this way. And maybe you've heard in your head, oh, cheaters never prosper. BS, cheaters prosper, right? You didn't have to study for the test, and guess what? You got an A. You didn't have to do that homework. You didn't have to do the reading. You're prospering right here, right now as a cheater. And yet, long run, you're building character. You're determining who you will be someday by how you're acting right here, right now. And that first time, if you felt that tinge of guilt or that like conviction in your heart, guess what? If you keep doing it, next time you feel a little less bad. The next time you feel a little less bad until you get to the point where you're just kind of numb to it. And then you can justify in your head, I am still a Christian, I'm still a Christ follower, I still go to church, I still do the Wednesday night life group thing, and this is just, it's not that big of a deal. The goal of our lives should not be to see how much we can get away with and still call ourselves Christian. Give me that last verse. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 7. Serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people. What if we worked in such a way in high school that it wasn't for the grade? It wasn't for the report card. It wasn't for your parents. It wasn't so that you could have the highest GPA in your class or be valedictorian or get by or get into a good college. What if our work ethic simply came from a place of, I'm building character. I'm determining who I'm going to be someday by how I'm acting today. Friends, we never got anywhere successfully if we just seek after immediate gratification. What's the easiest road? What's the easiest path? How can I get past this? No, the challenge is biblically. How do I work right here, right now in such a way that I'm pleasing God, not men?
Okay, we are going to go to 2 Corinthians. If you guys want to flip over. Going to chapter 5, verses 18 through 21. And this section, this little passage, is going to use the word reconciliation or reconciled a lot, which basically just means to reunite, to bring something back together again. So keep that in mind as we read it. So, starting in verse 18, it says, "All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ." So who brought us back, who reunited us to himself through Christ, "and gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting men's sins against them. And he has committed to us the message of reconciliation." This is the verse that I want to focus on. It says, "We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God." So yeah, that little verse says we are ambassadors of Christ, as if he's making his appeal through us. So you guys, myself, anybody who says that they love Jesus and are a Christian, like, you are an ambassador of Christ, which basically just means like you're an appointed representative. So your job is to represent this person. So we are to represent Christ and to make his name known and to make his name great. And we are God's plan to make him known to the world. Like, there's not a plan B of like, well, if they fail, it's fine. I'll find someone else to do it. Like, as Christians, that's literally what we're here for, is to make God's name known. And in order to do that, a great place to start is to be prepared for that, right? So you guys don't have to flip there, but if you just want to write it down, if you want to look at it later, it's 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. It's just a short little verse. Says, "But in your hearts set apart Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." So basically it's saying, God is saying, be prepared. Like, someone is going to come to you and they're going to ask about the hope that you have, and you need to be able to give a response. So imagine with me, you are in school. And someone comes up to you, and Rosemary, I'm going to use you. They come up to you and they're like, "Rosemary, you are so great. Like, you're so awesome. You have such a great attitude. Like, even when things don't go your way, like, you're so kind and genuine. And I know that you, like, believe in God and you go to church. And I'm kind of, like, curious as to who Jesus is. Like, can you just tell me about Jesus? And, like, why do you believe in him?" So if our goal here on earth is to make Christ known, that's, like, ideal. That's like best case scenario. Like, someone's coming to me. I didn't have to like go and pursue you or do anything. You just came to me and asked like, "Who is this Jesus?" Like, that's awesome. But now how many of you, and like Austin said earlier, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you would feel like, yeah, this is great. I feel like I can totally accurately portray the gospel and totally tell this person who Jesus is and like why it is that I'm a Christian? Or on the other side, how many of you would feel like, I just do, like, because I always have. I know that it's true, but like, you should go to church. Like, ask someone else could explain it better than me. And inviting someone to church is not a bad thing. But this is talking about, right, in that scenario, like, you should be prepared to give a response. Like, we as Christians should be able to tell the story of the gospel and who Jesus is. And if I'm being honest, myself in high school, even though I was very involved in church, I would have been the person to like panic and be like, "Oh gosh, I don't know. Ask somebody else, not me." But yeah, God is calling us to more than that, and he's telling us to be prepared for that to come. How many of you, this time you can raise your hands, please raise your hand if you have seen The Lord of the Rings. Yes, you guys, it's so good. So the second movie, there's 3 of them, if you didn't know. Well, I won't get into it. Okay, but the second movie, The Two Towers, is my favorite. And there's this like epic battle scene where the orcs, they're the Orokai, they're like the creatures, they're the bad guys, they're freaky looking, and they're going to fight the people of Rohan. If you've never seen Lord of the Rings, you're like, what are you talking about? But they're going to fight essentially these people, and they want to destroy them. They want them gone so that they can basically rule the world, because that's what happens in all movies. But yeah, they're going to fight the people of Rohan, and they know that it's coming. They know that the orcs are coming, and this battle is going to happen. So what do? They go to this place called Helm's Deep, and it's this fortress where they have fought battles in the past, and no one has ever like infiltrated the fortress before. So it's like, battles come in, we're going there. They get their armor, their swords, their shields. The elves come, they're their allies, and they're ready to fight. And then the orcs come, they're also very prepared, and they're more prepared. And they have like explosives and like ladders to climb the wall, and it's this like awesome battle scene. But could you imagine if the people of Rohan knew that the orcs were coming and they were like, it's fine. Like, we're just going to stay here. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to, like, get weapons. We're not going to go to our fortress to, like, protect ourselves. Because it's fine. Like, they're going to get here and they're not going to fight us. They're going to be like, never mind. You guys are great. We actually want you to live. We don't want to take over. Like, that's crazy, right? And would also make for a horrible movie. And that doesn't happen. And the orcs are prepared and the people of Rohan are prepared. In the same way, like, it would be crazy to think that the enemy isn't going to be prepared as well. Like, there's going to be people who try. We talked about best case scenario, right? Someone coming up to you and being like, tell me about Jesus. On the flip side of that, there's also going to be people who are like, you believe in God? Like, you believe in creation? You don't believe in evolution? Like, that's so stupid. Like, why would you think that? Like, how could you look at science? Like, why do you believe that? And not saying that you have to have, like, this perfect rebuttal for that, but that also is going to happen. And we need to be prepared for that. A great way to prepare is to ask questions. And that is like a huge push for your life group of asking questions to your leaders, to any of us on staff. Not that we are all always going to have the answer, but we'll help you to find that answer. And maybe I felt in high school a lot, like I go to church and like I'm the church kid, so like I can't ask the question because like I'm supposed to know the answer, but I didn't know any of the answers. So I felt like embarrassed, like I can't talk about it, I can't ask. But just as an encouragement, like, you guys absolutely do not have to have the answers, and it is okay to ask questions and to ask your leaders and they'll help you to figure those things out. And don't feel like, oh gosh, I'm not prepared. Like, I'm on the side that wouldn't know how to answer those questions. That's okay to acknowledge and be aware of the fact that you're in that place now. You don't have to be prepared like in this moment, but knowing that that is something that God calls us to, and we do need to work in order to be prepared for that when those things do come.
I was recently talking to a buddy of mine. Just as we close, I want to talk about the importance of third wheeling. Some of you just woke up a little bit, right? I probably one of the foremost experts on third wheeling. When I went home to my family for about 4 years, I ninth wheeled. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and so when I would hang out with my siblings and my family, it was like all of these married couples and Austin, right? Like, our family photos were embarrassing. I was always like me and all the kids, like, yeah, until Paige came around, and this last Christmas going home with Paige was like, hallelujah. But here's in a conversation that I recently had with one of my buddies. He was challenging me with the concept of third wheeling your relationship with God. Wait, what? Like, question mark? What does that even mean? And I love that Sarah said in that moment, Rosemary, to use you again, of that fastball down the middle, perfect setup. You're amazing. Tell me about Jesus. Is that a terrifying scenario for you, or is that a scenario that you look forward to? Is that a scenario where you would know how to answer that question, or is that a scenario that you'd be like, oof, I don't know. Like, come to church. Sarah Belgum, she'll tell you about it. Or Sean Breezy, or whoever it may be, Heather, Nehemiah. These are the people that I'll come and I'll point you to them. Now, don't get me wrong. Absolutely point people to us. We would love to come alongside you, have that conversation with them. However, what does it look like to respond to Scripture's challenge to always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that lies within? To not do so militantly, right? We're not called to be students of Scripture so that we can go and like shoot people down and be like, look how much I know about the Bible. Wah-ha-ha. That's not the goal, right? Do so with gentleness, with kindness. Do we have an answer for the person that throws us the fastball down the middle? And do we have an answer for the science teacher that says, are there any Christians in here? This actually happened to a friend of mine. Are there any Christians in here? My friend stood up and he goes, I just want you to all at the beginning of the semester to know what an idiot looks like. No joke. We live in a day, in an age where it's not friendly to believe in a Jesus that says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. We live in a day and age where that's offensive to say there is one way. Are we prepared to give an answer for the hope that lies within, or are we kind of third wheeling our relationship with Jesus? What do I mean by that? I go to church on the weekends. I go to a life group on Wednesday nights. and I listen to somebody else's interpretation of Scripture. Right? You listen to my interpretation of Scripture and my relationship with Jesus and something that I'm incredibly passionate about. You listen to Sarah's, you listen to Heather's, you listen to your life group leaders, and you kind of say, well, that's enough. I'm just gonna listen to them talk about the Bible. I'm just gonna listen to them talk about their passion and their walk with Jesus and their relationship with Jesus. Friends, we have a God that Genesis through Revelation calls us into relationship with him. Okay, rewind time to about a year and a half ago, when Paige and I weren't dating and we definitely weren't married yet. Imagine if I walked up to you and said, "Ooh, I really like the whole concept of marriage. Like, it's something I desire. I want to be married someday. This is something that I want." And then your answer to me was, "Well, just hang out with Greg and Sarah. Like, they're married. That should do it for you." Right? And I was like, "Ooh, yes, that's good." And so then every night I just went home with Greg and Sarah and I just sat there and I was like, "Marriage, isn't this great?" And I just kind of fists on my chin and was like, "Yes, like marriage, I get it now." And then about a year into that, not to mention how sick of me Greg and Sarah would be, but I write a book on how much I know about marriage because I watched their marriage. You would look at me and be like, what do you know about marriage? You watch that. You're not married. You're not even dating anybody. Let alone, are you married? How are you going to write a book about it? Well, I watched them. I've seen them do it. As preposterous as that would be, that's like us thinking that we have a relationship with Jesus because we watch other people have relationships with Jesus. We have no business doing anything for God if we're not doing life with God. When it comes to your school, the concept of doing schoolwork, homework, studying for a test, paying attention in class, being the type of student that teachers go, "I want North Coast Church Fuel 910 students. That's the kind of student I want in my classroom." Why? Because they're diligent, they're respectful, they do work well, they respect one another. There's something about this whole Christian thing. I'm not a Christian, but there's something about students that go to Fuel 910. I want those kind of students in my class. What would it look like if teachers actually said that? What would it look like to live missionally on our campuses? It's not going to happen if we are not individually doing life with God. It's not enough to just come here. It's not enough to just be a part of a life group. Are those good steps? Absolutely. But friends, it's got to start with us individually walking with Jesus. Don't third wheel your relationship with him. It's not going to work. It's not enough. God in Scripture says there's going to be a day that you stand before him and he's going to ask you one simple question. Do you know Jesus? Not do you know a lot about him? Not could you pass a 10-question Scantron multiple choice quiz about him? Not do you know somebody that knows him? Not what was your church attendance? Not who's your family? Not what church do you go to? Do you fill in your name? Do you know Jesus? How would we answer that question? I'm going to invite Michaela back up, and as we sing this last song, I just want to give you a simple invite. Sean talked about Zoe before service in his announcements. And I love doing Zoe. I love teaching it. I love the students that come to it, and it's an open invite. This isn't the type of thing, if you've never been to Zoe before, today could be your first one. And what we're doing over the next 6 Zoes, we're going to take the next 6 Zoes, which is about 3 months worth. We're going to talk about the gospel. 1, what is it? 2, how to share it. We're going to practice. We're going to dive into an open, honest conversation about what is this thing called the gospel? What is this good news? What is the good news? What does it mean? And it's going to be a space where you can ask hard questions. Love that Sarah brought that up. And sometimes when we come to church a lot, like if your church attendance is sky high, sometimes we get afraid to ask questions. Why? Because I should know the answer to that, and so I'm embarrassed to ask. This is going to be a space wide open where you can ask questions like, wait, I know we talk about Jesus dying all the time, but why did he have to die? That's an excellent question. And we're going to take the next 6 Zoes, And I know a lot of it's dependent on like, can your parents drive you? Can you be here? Can you stay late? Can you not? Maybe some of you just want free in and out because you're expecting that I go over 115 like I always do. But really, it's an invitation into an extra 30, 45 minutes of one, asking the question at the core of this thing called Christianity is the good news of Jesus. Do you know it? One. And two, would you be prepared to share it? Love that Sarah said, we are God's plan A. There is no plan B. He's making his appeal through you. As Michaela sings this song, I'm going to challenge you to just stay seated. And as we do this, as we stay seated, just would you do business with God in this moment? I love having this space at the end of a service where you can just, maybe something was convicting to you today. Maybe something was challenging. Maybe you heard something for the first time. Would you just chew on it during this song? You don't have to sing along. You can read the lyrics if you want. But would this just be a time and a space where you can pray? You can ask God a hard question. But would you do business with him?